The oil rig stood like a rusted titan in the middle of the endless sea, its iron bones groaning under the weight of secrets too heavy to bear. Toby adjusted his helmet, stepping onto the slick metal platform. The air smelled of salt and crude oil, but beneath it, something else. Something wrong. The workers avoided his gaze, their faces pale, their whispers drowned by the crashing waves. He had come to investigate a simple malfunction. But then, why did it feel like everyone here was waiting for something to go wrong? Then, the firstman vanished. No screams. No struggle. Just a pair of boots left by the rig's edge, as if the ocean had simply reached up and taken him. That night, the waters sang. A haunting, wordless melody that slithered through the pipes and filled the workers' dreams with visions of golden scales, blackened by oil. Toby should have left then. Should have listened. Instead, he followed the song, to the place his company never told him about. Beneath the waves, hidden in a secret facility, he found them. Mermaids. Chained. Drained. Dying. And at the center of it all, one who still had the strength to speak. "You have awakened something ancient," she whispered, her voice like distant thunder. "Now, it is coming for you." Toby didn't believe her. Until the ocean itself rose to prove her right. This is the story of how one man's ambition broke the sea, and how the sea came to take what was owed. Before we dive deeper into this epic tale, we'd love to know where you are watching from. Tell us in the comments. And if you love high-stakes fantasy filled with mermaids, magic, love, and sacrifice, don't just watch, be part of our adventure. Like this video, share it with someone who loves powerful stories, and hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow, we've got an extra special story lined up for you, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. The salty wind howled through the fishing village of Kita, carrying the scent of the restless sea. The waves crashed against the shore, as if the ocean itself was angry. The sky, painted in shades of deep gray, loomed over the horizon, a silent omen of what was to come. Toby adjusted his hard hat and tightened the strap on his work boots as he stepped out of the battered jeep. The vehicle had barely survived the rough, muddy roads that led to this remote coastline. He looked around. The village of Kita was small, a cluster of wooden huts with thatched roofs, their walls worn from years of salt and wind. Fishermen repaired their nets under the shade of baobab trees, their dark, calloused hands working with practiced ease. Women balanced baskets of plantains and smoked fish on their heads as they walked toward the market. But something was wrong. The villagers were watching him. They did not greet him. They did not smile. Their eyes, dark pools of suspicion, followed his every move. Toby sighed and walked toward the dock, where a small fishing boat waited to take him to the offshore oil rig. He wasn't here to make friends. Ocean Core Energy had sent him for one reason, to fix whatever was wrong with the rig. "Oga engineer," a voice called out. Toby turned to see an old man sitting on a wooden stool beneath a palm tree. His face was like cracked leather, his beard streaked with white. Around his neck, he wore a string of cowrie shells. "You dey go dat rig?" the old man asked, spitting into the sand. "Yes," Toby said, adjusting the strap of his backpack. "I'm here to investigate the malfunction." The old man chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Malfunction? No be machine problem be dat na the sea wave X." Toby frowned. "What do you mean?" The old man pointed toward the ocean, where the waves churned, restless and dark. "The water day talk. E don warn una, but una no go here. Na only when e swallow una go no." Toby exhaled sharply. He had heard stories like this before. Superstitions. Myths. He was a man of science, of logic. Machines broke. That was what they did. There was no such thing as an angry ocean. "I'm just here to do my job, Baba," he said, forcing a polite smile. "Nothing more." The old man shook his head. "Do your job, But when DC start to whisper your name, make you run. Toby nodded and turned toward the boat. He had wasted enough time. The ride to the oil rig was rough. The boat was small, barely big enough for the two fishermen who rowed it and Toby. The waves were unusually high, slamming against the wooden hull, sending salty spray into the air. Toby held onto the sides, his stomach churning. "Dis no be normal," one of the fishermen muttered, gripping his paddle tightly. "DC no day like dis before." Toby closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. He was tired. The trip from Lagos had been long, and now he had to deal with both a stormy sea and strange warnings from villagers. He just wanted to get to the rig, inspect the problem, and leave. But as they approached, he saw it. The Ekbo 12 oil rig loomed over the water like a rusting metal skeleton. Thick pillars extended deep into the ocean, supporting the massive platform above. Pipes, cranes, and towering fuel tanks stretched high into the sky. Usually, oil rigs were buzzing with activity, men moving back and forth, machines roaring, lights blinking. But this one felt silent. Too silent. No workers were visible. No movement. Something cold slithered down Toby's spine. The fishermen stopped rowing. One of them crossed his chest in silent prayer. "We no fit go further," he muttered. "Why?" Toby asked. The older fisherman, his face grim, pointed to the rig. "Evil day there." Toby wanted to argue. Wanted to tell them they were just afraid of shadows. But the words never came. Because at that moment, a deep, haunting song drifted from the rig. A song that did not belong to the wind. A song that made the waves pause. A song that whispered in a language no human should understand. Toby's heart pounded in his chest. He swallowed hard. "What was that?" he asked. The fishermen didn't answer. They just turned the boat around and left him alone in the middle of the sea. Alone with the oil rig. Alone with whatever was waiting for him. The platform groaned beneath Toby's boots as he climbed the rusted metal ladder onto Ekbo 12. The rig was massive, an iron beast floating in the heart of the restless sea, but something about it felt lifeless. He looked around. No workers. No movement. The only sound was the distant crash of waves and the eerie creak of metal shifting under the wind's force. Toby exhaled and pulled out his radio. He pressed the button. "This is Engineer Toby Iadil, reporting in. I've arrived on Ekbo 12. Where's the crew?" Static. He adjusted the frequency, trying again. "Anyone there? This is Toby, do you copy?" Nothing. His fingers tightened around the radio. It was unusual. Even if the rig had a malfunction, someone should have been there to meet him. He took a step forward, boots clanking against the metal grating. Oil rigs were usually noisy, machines humming, pipes hissing, generators whirring, but here, there was only silence. And that strange song. It was faint now, barely a whisper, but it was still there. It didn't sound like a machine. It sounded human. Toby shook off the unease creeping up his spine. He was an engineer, not a child. He didn't believe in ghosts. Whatever was happening here had a logical explanation. He walked toward the control room, pushing open the heavy steel door. Inside, dim emergency lights flickered. The computers hummed weakly, their screens filled with error messages. Papers were scattered across the desks. Half-drunk cups of coffee sat abandoned, their contents long gone cold. But what struck Toby the most was the smell, oil and something else. Something rotten. His stomach twisted as he moved deeper into the room. Then he saw it. A boot. Lying on the floor, half covered by an overturned chair. Toby's breath caught in his throat. He stepped forward and knelt. It was still attached to a foot. His pulse thundered in his ears as he yanked the chair away. A man lay there, eyes wide open, lips parted as if his last breath had been stolen mid-scream. His skin was pale, wet, and his fingers were curled into tight fists. A worker. Dead. Toby shot to his feet, heart pounding. His breath came in short, sharp bursts. He had seen accidents before. Oil rigs were dangerous places, but this was different. There was no wound. No blood. It was as if the men had simply drowned, here, on dry metal. Something dripped onto the desk. Toby's gaze snapped up. The ceiling was wet. Not from oil. Not from water. From something thick and black, seeping through the metal like ink bleeding through paper. A chill ran down his spine. The rig was bleeding. Toby staggered back, his heart pounding in his chest. He wiped his forehead, but his fingers came away slick with sweat. Calm down, Toby. Focus. He took a shaky breath and forced himself to examine the room again. The dead worker lay motionless, his body stiff like he had been frozen in fear. The black liquid oozing from the ceiling dripped slowly, pooling onto the desk below. Toby reached out hesitantly, rubbing a bit of the substance between his fingers. Thick. Oily. Wrong. It wasn't crude oil. He had worked with oil long enough to know its texture. This was something else. Something unnatural. A sudden creak echoed through the rig. Toby spun around, his eyes darting to the hallway. Was someone there? The overhead lights flickered again. The silence of the rig pressed against him, wrapping around his body like an unseen hand. The place felt wrong. Like it was holding its breath. Then he heard it. Drip. 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 Not from the ceiling. From down the hall. Toby reached for his flashlight, gripping it tightly as he stepped out of the control room. The hallway stretched ahead, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. Rusted pipes lined the walls, and the metallic scent of salt water mixed with the lingering stench of oil. Something about this place felt abandoned. But that didn't make sense. Even if there was a problem, where was everyone? The workers wouldn't just vanish. There should have been at least 20 men stationed here. Yet the only sign of them was a single corpse. A shiver ran through him, but he shook it off. He needed to find answers. The control room logs might have records of what happened. Toby reached the main console and tapped on the monitor. The screen flickered, then loaded up a list of the rig's last recorded security logs. His eyes scanned the entries. 10:45 a.m., routine maintenance check. 11:30 a.m., system malfunction detected. 12:15 p.m., crew reports strange noises beneath the platform. 1 p.m., emergency evacuation initiated. 1:15 p.m., evacuation failed. Toby's breath caught in his throat. Failed. He clicked on the last recorded security footage. The screen flashed to life, showing grainy black and white footage of the rig's main deck. Workers rushed across the platform, shouting at each other. Something was wrong. Then, the camera glitched. The footage became distorted, lines of static cutting across the screen. But Toby saw something, a shape rising from the water. Something huge. The screen flickered again, and suddenly the workers were gone. The deck was empty. Toby's stomach twisted. His hands gripped the edge of the console. This wasn't a simple malfunction. Something had taken them. He exhaled shakily and turned off the screen. Then, just as he stepped back, a whisper. Low and distant, like a voice carried on the wind. His skin prickled. The whisper came again. This time, closer. Toby. His heart slammed against his ribs. Toby. Cold dread crawled up his spine. The whisper knew his name. He spun around, the flashlight shaking in his grip. The hallway behind him was empty, just rusted pipes and shadows stretching into the distance. But the whisper didn't stop. It slithered through the air, weaving through the walls like the rig itself was speaking to him. Then, a sound. A deep, metallic groan from beneath his feet. The rig was shifting. Toby froze. The platform lurched violently to one side, sending him stumbling against the wall. A loud boom echoed from below, like something had slammed into the rig's foundations. Panic shot through him. The rig wasn't malfunctioning. It was sinking. And beneath the waves, something was waking up. Toby braced himself against the wall as the rig groaned beneath his feet. A deep boom echoed from below, reverberating through the metal like a heartbeat. Something was moving underneath the platform. He forced himself to breathe. He needed to think. The rig was still standing, for now, but if it kept shifting like this, it wouldn't last long. He had to find out what was happening before it was too late. His first priority: check the lower decks. That was where most of the structural support was located, along with the main drilling station. If something was affecting the rig, it would start there. Gripping his flashlight, he made his way toward the maintenance hatch. It was a metal door at the end of the hallway, rusted at the edges. A faint humming sound pulsed behind it. Toby hesitated. That wasn't normal. He placed his ear against the cold steel and listened. Beneath the hum, there was a rhythmic sound. A deep, slow breathing. His fingers twitched against the handle. Something about this felt wrong. But he had no choice. He needed answers. With a deep breath, he pulled the door open. The hatch groaned as it swung aside, revealing a narrow metal staircase spiraling downward into darkness. Cold, damp air rushed up to meet him, carrying the thick scent of salt and something else, something decayed. His flashlight beam cut through the blackness, revealing rusted pipes and flickering lights. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow, steady drops. The deeper he went, the colder it became. Then he saw it. A second door. But this one was different. Unlike the rusted steel of the rig, this door was smooth. Black. Almost organic. Symbols had been etched into its surface, ancient-looking markings that made his skin crawl. Toby swallowed hard. He had worked on oil rigs for years. He had seen every kind of machinery used in deep-sea drilling. This door did not belong here. Something had been built beneath the rig, something the company had never told him about. His hand trembled as he reached for the control panel beside the door. The screen was cracked, but still functional. He pressed a few buttons, trying to override the lock. A robotic voice crackled to life. Access denied. Security clearance required. Toby cursed under his breath. He had been sent to fix a malfunction, but clearly, this was no ordinary rig. Then, just as he was about to step back, the door unlocked. The symbols on the surface glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then, with a slow, mechanical hiss, the door slid open. A blast of freezing air hit him. Beyond the door was a long tunnel, dimly lit by overhead lights. The walls weren't made of metal. They were smooth and dark, like the inside of a massive shell. Toby's pulse quickened. This wasn't just a maintenance area. It was a hidden facility. His company, Ocean Core Energy, had built something beneath the ocean floor. And whatever it was, they didn't want anyone to know about it. He stepped inside. And that was when he heard it. A voice. Soft, melodic, and inhuman. A song drifting through the air. Toby's breath hitched. He wasn't alone down here. Something was waiting for him. Toby's footsteps echoed as he walked deeper into the tunnel. The air was damp, carrying a faint metallic scent, salt, rust, and something older. The walls, they weren't normal. Not steel. Not concrete. They felt alive, like the inside of a shell hardened over centuries. His fingers brushed the surface as he walked, and a chill shot up his arm. The song grew louder. It wasn't just a sound. It was inside him. Crawling under his skin. Humming in his bones. A strange, rhythmic breathing pulsed through the air, matching the beat of his own heart. Then, he saw it. At the end of the corridor, a massive chamber. He stepped inside, and his breath caught in his throat. The room was vast, stretching out into shadows. Large metal platforms hung from the ceiling, holding strange machines that pulsed with glowing blue liquid. The walls were lined with tanks, some broken, others still sealed. Inside them, dark shapes floated in silence. Then his eyes locked onto the center of the room. A circular pool of water. Dark. Still. And above it, chains. Toby's heart pounded as his flashlight followed the links. They stretched downward, disappearing into the black depths of the pool. The song was louder now, vibrating through the air. Then, movement. The water rippled. Slowly, something began to rise. Toby stumbled back as a figure emerged from the pool. She was beautiful. And terrible. Her golden scales shimmered even through the thick, oily residue clinging to them. Long, braided hair flowed down her back, adorned with coral beads that once must have shone like the morning sun but were now stained with grime. Her arms were bound in iron shackles, glowing with strange, ancient symbols. And her eyes. Her eyes burned with fury. The Mermaid Queen had been chained. Toby felt the air leave his lungs. This was no ordinary creature. This was a goddess of the sea. And she was trapped. A whisper curled through the room, soft as the tide. You are not one of them. Toby's blood turned to ice. She was speaking to him. Her voice was smooth, ancient, filled with something older than time itself. Toby swallowed hard. His voice barely came out. Who are you? The mermaid's lips curled into a bitter smile. I am Dara. She lifted her hands, the chains rattling. The glow from the symbols cast eerie shadows across her face. The last warden of the deep. Toby took a step forward, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Why are you here? Dara's gaze darkened. The water trembled around her. Because of your people. Her voice sharpened, filled with anger. They take. They steal. They drain the life from the sea and give nothing in return. Toby's stomach twisted. The machines in the room. The tanks filled with strange shapes. The energy source his company had been testing. It wasn't a new technology. It was mermaid blood. A wave of nausea hit him. He staggered back, shaking his head. No. That's not possible. Dara's expression didn't change. It is. And now, because of their greed, something has awakened. The water beneath her darkened, bubbling like it was alive. A deep rumbling filled the room, vibrating through the walls. Toby's breath came fast and uneven. His company had lied to him. This wasn't just an oil rig. It was a prison. A prison for something that should never have been disturbed. And now, the ocean wanted revenge. Toby's breath came in quick, shallow gasps. The room felt smaller, as if the very walls were pressing in on him. Dara's golden scales, now blackened by crude oil, glowed faintly in the dim light. Her eyes locked onto his, unblinking, unreadable. The chains binding her wrists hummed, pulsating with a power he couldn't understand. The symbols etched into them flickered, their eerie glow matching the deep rumbling beneath his feet. The rig was shaking. Something was waking up. Toby forced himself to step forward. His voice trembled. What did they do? Dara tilted her head slightly, her long, braided hair floating around her like it was weightless. Her gaze burned into him. "Your people." She spat the words like a curse. They came to the ocean not to live with it, but to take from it. To carve into its heart. To bleed it dry. Toby swallowed hard. His company, Ocean Core Energy, had sent him here to investigate a malfunction. But it was never about a broken rig, was it? This was a harvesting site. They weren't extracting oil. They were extracting life. He shook his head in disbelief. They never told me." Dara let out a soft, humorless laugh. It was a cold, hollow sound. "They never do." The chains rattled as she shifted, and the water beneath her shuddered, rippling outward in slow, deliberate waves. Toby felt a chill crawl up his spine. "These chains," Dara whispered, "are the last thing keeping it locked away." Toby's pulse quickened. Keeping what locked away? For the first time, a flicker of something passed through Dara's eyes. Not anger. Not hatred. Fear. Her voice was quieter now, like the whisper of a dying tide. "The abyss." The word sent a tremor through the air, as if the ocean itself had recoiled at its mention. Toby shook his head. "I don't understand." Dara's golden eyes locked onto his. "The deep is not empty, human." The words hung between them. Heavy. Drowning him. Then, she lifted her shackled hands. The glowing symbols flared, bright as a dying sun. The chains trembled. And below them, something stirred. A low, guttural sound rose from the depths beneath the rig. Not a sound. A voice. Toby's entire body froze. It wasn't a voice he could hear with his ears. It was something older, something beneath sound, something that vibrated through his bones like a deep, endless calling. His flashlight flickered. The water in the pool darkened, turning black as ink. It began to rise, twisting upward in thin, writhing tendrils. Dara's voice was sharp now. Urgent. "They have awakened it." Toby stumbled back, his breath ragged. "What is it?" Dara's gaze burned into his. Something that should never have been touched. A sudden scream tore through the facility. Not from Dara. From above. The rig was no longer just shaking, it was screaming. Metal groaned. Pipes burst. The distant sound of rushing water filled the corridors. Something was coming. And the ocean was no longer waiting. Toby spun toward the corridor, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. The screams from above grew sharper, cutting through the low mechanical hum of the facility. Something was happening on the rig. His first instinct was to run, to get as far away from this cursed place as possible. But then his gaze flickered back to Dara. She was still bound, still trapped in those cursed chains. The glow of the symbols had grown weaker, but the air around them was thick with tension. If she was telling the truth, if the chains were the only thing keeping the abyss sealed. Toby clenched his fists. This wasn't just about him anymore. But before he could make a decision, another boom echoed from above. The entire rig lurched, and the facility walls groaned under the weight of the shifting ocean. A voice crackled through his radio, static-filled and panicked. "Toby. Are you there?" The rig, the voice broke into static. Toby grabbed the radio, pressing the button. "Who is this? What's happening?" A sharp, guttural noise came through the speaker. Not human. Not machine. Something else. Then the radio went silent. Toby's stomach twisted. He had to move. He turned back to Dara, his mind racing. Should he free her? Could he? She studied him with calm, golden eyes. "Go," she said. "You must witness what you have done." Her words sent a chill through him. He hesitated, then turned and bolted for the corridor. The surface. The moment Toby emerged from the hidden facility, the scent of blood and salt hit him like a wave. The rig was dying. Pipes had burst, spewing black sludge across the metal walkways. The sky, once clear, was now swirling with storm clouds, thick and heavy with rage. Rain lashed against the rig, the wind howling like a wounded animal. And the crew? They were gone. Toby's boots splashed through puddles of seawater as he ran toward the main deck. His breath came in ragged gasps. Then he saw him. Deo. His closest friend. He was standing at the edge of the rig, staring down at the water below. Toby's heart leapt into his throat. Deo, he shouted. What are you doing? We have to go. Deo turned slowly. Toby froze. Deo's eyes were wrong. They were black, darker than the deepest trench. Black and shifting. Like the ocean itself had swallowed him whole. He smiled. But it wasn't Deo's smile. It was something else. And then, without a word, he stepped off the rig. Toby lunged forward. No. But it was too late. Deo vanished beneath the waves. The water closed over him, swallowing him in an instant. Toby staggered back, his mind reeling. The ocean wasn't just rising. It was taking them. One by one. A deep, inhuman voice echoed from below. A voice that did not belong to any man. A voice that had been waiting. And as Toby stared into the churning, black waves, something opened its eyes. Toby stood frozen at the edge of the rig, his heart hammering in his chest. Deo was gone. The water where his friend had vanished churned violently, but there were no bubbles, no struggle, just the endless, writhing blackness beneath the stormy sky. Then, the rig shook again. A loud, ear-piercing groan ripped through the metal structure as something massive moved beneath them. The storm had fully descended now, and the waves were crashing higher, as if the ocean itself had grown hands and was reaching for the rig. Toby's survival instincts finally kicked in. He ran. His boots splashed through the ankle-deep seawater that now covered the deck. The emergency lights flickered, barely piercing through the growing darkness. Then he saw them. The crew. Or at least, what was left of them. A dozen men stood scattered across the platform, their bodies swaying as if caught in an unseen current. Their eyes, all black. Like Deo's. Toby's breath caught in his throat. No, 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 no. One of them turned, a mechanic he recognized. Uche. But his skin looked wet, like seawater had soaked into him. When he opened his mouth, black liquid dribbled down his chin. Then, in unison, the crew started singing. The same eerie, otherworldly song Toby had heard below. It wrapped around him like a cold embrace, filling his head, making his vision blur. Toby clenched his fists, fighting the pull. He had to get out of here. The radio at his hip crackled to life. Toby. Toby, can you hear me? It was Captain Bode. Toby fumbled for the radio, his fingers slick with seawater. Captain. The rig, something's happening. The crew, there. Get to the helipad. Now. Bode's voice was hoarse, desperate. We have one bird left. If you don't get here in 2 minutes, you're dead. Toby didn't hesitate. He turned and sprinted toward the helipad. But as he moved, he heard something behind him. A deep, wet crawling sound. He risked a glance over his shoulder. And his blood ran cold. The crew was no longer just standing. They were moving. Their bodies twisted unnaturally as they dropped to all fours. Their fingers elongated, turning into something wrong, like sharpened coral. And then they crawled after him. Toby didn't stop to think. He ran faster. The wind screamed around him as he reached the final staircase leading up to the helipad. His legs burned, his lungs ached, but he did not stop. He burst onto the platform, nearly slipping on the rain-slick metal. The helicopter was there, its rotors spinning, struggling against the storm. Captain Bode leaned out from the open door, waving frantically. "Jump, Toby." Toby didn't hesitate. He lunged forward. Just as something cold wrapped around his ankle. His body jerked backward so violently that his breath was knocked from his lungs. Toby hit the ground hard. His vision blurred, but he could see it. One of the transformed crew had grabbed him. Its fingers dug into his flesh, unnaturally strong. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of jagged, needle-like teeth. Toby screamed. Bang. A gunshot rang out. The grip on Toby's leg loosened, then vanished. Bode stood above him, pistol smoking, his face twisted in sheer terror. "Move, damn it." Toby scrambled to his feet and leapt into the helicopter. The moment he was inside, Bode slammed the door shut. The pilot, a young man named Sei, was already pulling them into the air. "Hold on," he shouted. The helicopter lifted off. Just as the rig finally collapsed. The metal structure screamed as the ocean pulled it downward. The water rose up like a mouth, swallowing the platform, the buildings, the people. And then, the sea went still. Toby stared down, his body trembling violently. The rig was gone. And beneath the surface, something had awakened. Toby sat slumped against the side of the helicopter, his chest rising and falling in rapid, uneven breaths. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. The rig was gone. 1 minute, it had stood firm against the waves, a towering monument of steel and greed. The next, it had vanished beneath the ocean's hunger, swallowed whole by something far older and far more powerful than any man-made machine. He should have felt relief. Instead, all he felt was dread. Captain Bode was in the seat across from him, his face drenched in sweat despite the cold. He was gripping his pistol so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. The gun had saved Toby's life, but it had been useless against whatever had truly taken the crew. The pilot, Sei, was gripping the controls with trembling hands. His voice crackled through the headset. We're clear," he repeated the words like a prayer. Toby swallowed, forcing himself to speak. Where are we going?" Bode's eyes flickered to him. He hesitated, then exhaled sharply. "There's a supply station about 30 miles east. It's small, just a refueling post, but it has a radio. We can call for help." Toby nodded numbly. He turned his gaze out the window, staring at the endless stretch of black ocean below. It looked calm now. Deceptively so. But something still felt wrong. His skin itched. His ears rang. And then, a sound. A whisper. It started as a low, distant hum. Faint, almost like the wind whistling through the chopper's frame. But as the seconds passed, it grew. Louder. Closer. A song. Toby stiffened. His eyes darted to Bode, but the captain's expression had changed. His gaze was unfocused, his lips slightly parted, as though he were listening to something no one else could hear. And then, Sei gasped. Toby turned sharply. The pilot's hands were trembling. His breath had become ragged, his shoulders tensing. Sei. Bode's voice was hoarse. The pilot didn't respond. He just stared ahead, eyes widening. Then he slammed the controls forward. The helicopter lurched. Toby was thrown against his seat as the aircraft dipped violently to the left. The ocean rushed up toward them, its dark waves stretching like arms reaching for prey. "What the hell are you doing?" Bode shouted, grabbing for the controls. Sei's voice came out in a ragged whisper. "She's calling me." Toby's stomach twisted. No. The song had reached him. It had reached all of them. Bode fought for the controls, but Sei was strong. Too strong. The helicopter kept tilting, spiraling downward. Toward the water. Toward her. Toby moved on instinct. He lunged forward, grabbing the emergency flare gun from the side compartment. "Forgive me, Sei," he whispered. And pulled the trigger. The flare exploded in a bright burst of red light, slamming into Sei's shoulder. The pilot screamed. His grip loosened, just for a moment, just long enough. Bode ripped the controls back. The helicopter jerked violently as it corrected, narrowly missing the crashing waves below. Toby felt his stomach lurch as they climbed back into the sky. Sei groaned in pain, clutching his burned shoulder. His body trembled, his pupils blown wide. I almost. He didn't need to finish. Toby knew. They had escaped the rig. But the ocean wasn't done with them. And somewhere below, beneath the ink-black waves, something still watched. Something still sang. The helicopter finally steadied, but the air inside remained heavy. Toby pressed his back against the seat, his breath still coming too fast. His hands gripped his knees as he tried to calm himself. Bode had taken full control of the flight now, his knuckles pale as he steered toward their destination. Sei sat hunched forward, his chest rising and falling in short, uneven gasps. His burned shoulder smoldered, the flare wound a searing red mark against his dark skin. But none of them spoke. Because they all knew the truth. The song was still in their heads. And the ocean wasn't letting them go. The supply station. 20 minutes later, the first glimpse of land appeared on the horizon. The supply station sat on a small artificial oil platform, built decades ago as a remote fuel stop for cargo ships and emergency landings. A single metal tower stood at its center, topped with a blinking red light. Below it, a few scattered buildings clung to the rusting structure. It was small. Too small. But it was land. And right now, land meant hope. Toby exhaled in relief as they neared the platform. We made it. But Bode wasn't so sure. His sharp eye scanned the station below. Where are the workers? Toby's stomach twisted. He hadn't noticed it at first. But now, as they approached, the station looked wrong. There were no people. No movement. No lights in the buildings. Just the cold wind and the endless sound of waves. Bode gritted his teeth. Sei, bring us down. The pilot hesitated. His hands were still shaky, his skin clammy. But he obeyed. The helicopter touched down on the platform with a gentle thud. Bode immediately unbuckled his harness, grabbing his pistol again. We move fast. In and out. Toby followed, his heart pounding as they stepped onto the silent station. The ghost station. The moment Toby's boots hit the ground, he felt it. Something was wrong. The air was thicker here, the scent of salt and rust overwhelming his senses. The metal beneath his feet was wet, slick with something that wasn't just seawater. And then he saw it. Dark streaks running along the walls. Not rust. Blood. Toby swallowed hard. Where is everyone? Bode scanned the area. Inside, maybe. Sei stayed by the helicopter, gripping his wounded shoulder, his eyes darting nervously. I don't like this, he muttered. Toby didn't either. But they had no choice. They moved toward the main radio building, their footsteps echoing through the empty station. The door hung slightly open, creaking in the wind. Bode raised his pistol. He nudged the door open with his boot. The room inside was dark. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of stale water. And then they saw them. The workers. All of them. huddled in the corner. Still. Unmoving. Toby's breath caught in his throat. Are they? Bode took a cautious step forward. And then the nearest worker twitched. Toby froze. A sick, gurgling clicking sound came from the man's throat. His body shifted, but not like a normal person waking up. It was slow. Too slow. Like a puppet whose strings had been tangled. Then another worker moved. Then another. Until the entire group turned toward them. Toby stepped back. The workers' eyes were black. Just like the crew. Just like Deo. The song was here. The ocean had already reached this place. And they were not alone. Toby's pulse thundered in his ears. The workers, or whatever they had become, moved like something unnatural, their bodies sluggish and jerky, like they were being controlled by invisible hands. The nearest man, his skin waxy and dripping salt water, let out a low, rattling breath. His mouth hung open, black liquid oozing from his lips. Then he sang. A single haunting note, deep and mournful. The sound burrowed into Toby's skull. His vision swam. The room warped. The floor beneath him wasn't metal anymore, it was water. Deep, endless, pulling him down. No. Toby clenched his fists, forcing himself to focus. This isn't real. Beside him, Bode wasn't so lucky. The captain staggered, his breath ragged. His grip on the pistol loosened. The song was getting to him. And the workers were moving closer. Toby grabbed Bode's arm. Captain. We need to go. Now. Bode's head snapped up. His pupils were dilated, his expression distant. But at Toby's words, something in him clicked back into place. His grip tightened on the gun. Then he fired. Bang. The gunshot shattered the air, cutting through the eerie song like a knife. The nearest worker jerked backward, a hole in his chest. But he didn't fall. Instead, he just looked down. At the bullet wound. Then his head tilted back up, eyes black as the abyss. Toby's stomach dropped. The bullet hadn't done anything. Then the workers rushed forward. Run! Bode bellowed. Toby didn't need to be told twice. He spun, sprinting toward the exit as the sound of wet, slapping footsteps filled the room. Bode was right behind him, reloading the gun even as he ran. The workers moved unnaturally fast, their bodies jerking forward in inhuman bursts of speed. Their wet hands scraped the metal walls, leaving behind blackened streaks. Toby's breath burned in his chest as he burst out of the radio building. Sei was still by the helicopter, his eyes wide in horror. Get it started. Bode roared. Sei didn't argue. He scrambled into the cockpit, frantically flipping switches. The workers poured out of the building, their mouths opening in inhuman wails. Toby leapt onto the helicopter's skids, hoisting himself up as Bode fired another shot behind him. Sei yanked the controls. The helicopter lurched upward. But as they lifted off, something latched onto Toby's leg. His stomach plunged. One of the workers had grabbed him. Its grip was ice cold, fingers digging into his flesh. Its mouth opened wide, revealing a dark void where its throat should have been. Toby kicked. Once. Twice. The grip tightened. Then Bode's pistol flashed. Bang. The worker's hand exploded into black sludge. The grip loosened, and Toby wrenched himself free, tumbling into the cabin just as the helicopter soared higher. He gasped, chest heaving. His whole body shook. Below, the workers just stood there. Watching. The ocean was not done with them. And neither was she. Toby lay sprawled on the helicopter's cold metal floor, his chest heaving. His legs still burned where the worker had grabbed him. The sensation of that grip, cold, unnatural, would not leave his mind. Bode collapsed against the seat beside him, gripping his pistol so hard his knuckles turned white. His face was drenched in sweat. What in God's name was that? Sei, still clutching the controls, shook his head. They were supposed to be human, he muttered, his voice hoarse. Just workers. People. But they weren't. Not anymore. Toby pushed himself up, his entire body trembling. They were singing. Bode wiped his face with a shaking hand. Yeah. And that damn song almost got me. His voice was tense, raw. If you hadn't snapped me out of it, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. They all knew what would have happened. Sei gripped the flight controls tighter. His hands were still unsteady, but the helicopter remained stable in the air. Bode glanced back at the disappearing station, his jaw clenched. The ocean spreading. Toby swallowed hard. What do we do? Silence. Then Sei exhaled sharply. We keep flying. We find somewhere safe. But the ocean didn't want them to leave. The radio crackled. A soft, wet whisper slithered through the static. Toby. His blood turned to ice. That voice. It wasn't Bode. It wasn't Sei. It was Deo. Toby's breath caught. He turned slowly, eyes locked on the radio. The whisper came again, this time clearer. You left me. His stomach twisted. No. This wasn't real. Deo was gone. He had watched him get dragged into the abyss. He had seen the black water claim him. Hadn't he? The whisper grew louder. Come home, Toby. And then. A scream. The helicopter shook violently. The entire aircraft jerked to the left, as if something had grabbed hold of it. Sei yelled, fighting to keep control. What the hell? Bode lunged for the door, looking down. His face paled. It's the water. Toby scrambled forward, and his breath left him. The ocean wasn't just beneath them. It was rising. The black water wasn't behaving like water anymore. It swirled upward, reaching for them, twisting like hundreds of writhing limbs. Like it was alive. Like it had a will of its own. Toby's skin prickled with terror. They weren't flying away. The ocean was following them. And from its depths, something was watching. Something huge. And it wasn't done with them. The helicopter lurched violently, its frame groaning as if the air itself had thickened around them. Sei fought against the controls, his arms shaking. It's pulling us down. Toby gripped the side of his seat, his heart pounding. Below them, the ocean twisted like a living thing, its surface bubbling with something dark and unnatural. And in the middle of that churning abyss, something was rising. A shape, massive, formless, shifting like a shadow beneath the waves. And then, the song returned. Low and mournful, crawling through the radio, through the very air. Come home, Toby. Deo's voice. Clearer now. More real. Toby's breath hitched. His mind reeled. He had seen Deo die. Hadn't he? A cold dread slithered down his spine. What if he hadn't? What if? A sudden weight slammed into the helicopter. The entire aircraft shuddered. Sei yelled as the controls ripped from his hands. The helicopter pitched downward, nose tilting toward the ocean. They were falling. Bode grabbed Toby's arm. Brace. The ocean rushed toward them. And as they fell, something broke the surface. Toby's mind couldn't comprehend it, it was too big, too impossible. A dark figure, its form shifting like liquid shadow, its eyes glowing with a sickly green light. And then, it reached for him. Toby barely had time to scream. The ocean swallowed them whole. Darkness. Cold, crushing darkness. Toby's lungs burned. His body tumbled weightlessly, dragged downward by invisible hands. He kicked, thrashed, but the ocean held him like a jealous lover, pulling him deeper into its endless, suffocating embrace. He tried to scream, but no sound came. The water around him was not water anymore. It was thicker, almost like oil, clinging to his skin, seeping into his mouth, his nostrils. It whispered as it moved. 100 voices. 1,000. Calling his name. Toby. His chest contracted, desperate for air. His vision darkened. The ocean floor was nowhere in sight, only an endless abyss stretching below, yawning wide like the mouth of a sleeping god. And then... hands. Cold, slick hands wrapped around his arms, his waist, his legs. He jerked, his body convulsing in panic. The hands pulled him down, down, down. Faces swam around him, pale and bloated. Deo. The workers from the rig. Men he had known. Their eyes were gone, replaced with endless black voids. Their mouths moved, but no sound came, only bubbles and whispers. Then, from the darkness below, a shape rose. A woman. No, not a woman. A mermaid. Her body gleamed with golden scales, though many were now blackened with oil. Her hair floated like seaweed, her eyes a deep, bottomless green. And in those eyes, a storm was brewing. Dara. The Mermaid Queen. She reached for him, her long fingers grazing his throat. Toby froze. A thought, sudden and terrible, slammed into his mind. She wasn't here to save him. She was here to judge him. And the ocean was not merciful. Then, the hands gripping him tightened. And Toby was dragged down into the abyss. Toby's mind swam between consciousness and oblivion as the ocean dragged him deeper. The voices whispering his name multiplied, pressing against his skull like unseen fingers. He wanted to fight, to struggle, but the weight of the sea was absolute. Then, the darkness shifted. A light bloomed in the abyss. Faint at first, like a dying ember, then brighter, revealing a massive city beneath the waves. Toby's breath caught. It was impossible. Coral towers stretched toward the surface, their spirals shimmering with eerie bioluminescence. Strange fish, glowing like spirits, weaved through the ruins of a forgotten civilization. Massive chains, covered in seaweed and barnacles, ran across the seabed, vanishing into the distance. And at the city center, a throne. Carved from the bones of sea monsters, it sat atop a jagged rock formation, framed by pillars that curved like the ribs of a drowned god. Dara stood before it, her golden tail shimmering despite the oil staining her scales. Her eyes locked onto Toby. He barely had time to react before the hands holding him hurled him forward. He crashed onto the seabed, the impact knocking the air from his lungs. Yet, he did not drown. He could breathe. The water around him was no longer water, it was something else, something ancient, something alive. A prison between worlds. The whispers faded. Silence settled over the sunken city like a heavy fog. Then, Dara spoke. Her voice was low and cold, echoing through the depths. You should not be here. Toby pushed himself up, his limbs trembling. Please, he rasped, his throat raw. I don't understand. Dara's gaze hardened. You understand enough. She lifted a hand, and the waters around her shifted. From the shadows, more mermaids emerged, their scales dulled with grime, their eyes burning with hatred. Toby flinched. They were all staring at him. A ripple passed through the ocean floor. A pulse of ancient power. Then Dara spoke again. Your people have stolen from the sea. Her voice was calm, but the water vibrated with the force of her words. You have taken what was never yours to take. Toby's heart pounded. He wanted to deny it, to beg for mercy, but the truth sat heavy on his tongue. His company had bled the ocean dry. They had captured mermaids, drained them, turned their essence into a fuel that defied nature itself. And now, the sea wanted balance. Dara stepped forward, her hair floating like ink in water. "Tell me, Toby," she murmured. Her fingers lifted, brushing against his chest, right over his heart. "How should the ocean punish a thief?" Toby's stomach dropped. The mermaids around him moved closer, their tails flickering through the water. Some held weapons carved from coral, others extended webbed claws, their eyes gleaming with vengeance. They wanted blood. Toby swallowed hard. There was no escape. Dara tilted her head, waiting. Toby knew then, this was a trial. And the sentence would be death. Unless he could find a way to bargain with the ocean itself. Toby's breath came in shallow gasps as the weight of the ocean's judgment pressed down on him. Around him, the mermaids moved like ghosts, their eyes glowing in the eerie blue light of the underwater city. Dara's fingers lingered over his heart, her expression unreadable. "Speak, thief," she murmured. "Tell me why you should be spared." Toby swallowed hard. His mind raced. What could he say? He had seen the truth now, the horror his company had unleashed, the suffering of the mermaids, the ancient thing that stirred beneath the waves. There was no defense. And yet, he wasn't ready to die. His voice was hoarse, but steady. "I didn't know." Dara's expression did not change. Ignorance does not wash away blood. The water around them darkened, like the ocean itself was listening. Toby's chest tightened. "I didn't know, but now I do." He forced himself to hold her gaze. "And I can help." A ripple of doubt passed through the crowd. Some of the mermaids exchanged wary glances. Dara, however, remained still. Then, she laughed. Soft at first, but cold. Mocking. "Help," she repeated, stepping back. "You believe yourself a savior now." Toby clenched his fists. "I don't know what I am. But I know I can't fix this if I'm dead." The mermaids hissed, their tails lashing the seabed. One of them, a warrior with scarred arms and burning blue eyes, swam forward. "Enough of this," she snarled. "He is human. He is guilty. Let the sea take him." A chorus of agreement rippled through the crowd. Toby's stomach twisted. Dara lifted a hand, silencing them. She regarded Toby for a long moment, then exhaled softly. "You offer help," she said. "But the ocean does not accept empty promises." The air around them grew heavy. Toby's skin prickled as something unseen coiled through the water. Dara's gaze hardened. "There is only one way to prove yourself." She raised her hand. From the darkness, a shape emerged. A blade, long, curved, carved from the fang of a sea beast. It drifted toward Toby, stopping just inches from his hands. Dara's next words sent a chill through his bones. "Spill the blood of your own." The mermaids hissed in approval. Toby's breath caught. "What?" Dara's voice was calm. "If you are not with them, then prove it." She nodded toward the shadows behind him. "Your people are here." Toby turned. His blood ran cold. In the depths beyond the city, figures floated, humans. Sei. Bode. The strike team. Their bodies were bound in tendrils of black water, their eyes half-lidded, their movements sluggish. They were alive. For now. Dara's voice was soft, but unyielding. "Choose." Toby's pulse thundered in his ears. Could he do it? Could he kill his own people to prove his loyalty to the ocean? Or was there another way? His fingers hovered over the blade. The weight of the ocean's judgment pressed down. Time was running out. and the abyss was waiting. Toby's fingers hovered over the serpent fang blade, its dark surface gleaming with an unnatural glow. The weight of the ocean's demand pressed into his soul, heavier than the water around him. Behind him, Sei, Bode, and the strike team floated, their bodies entangled in black tendrils, their breath slow but steady. Alive, for now. And in front of him, Dara. Her emerald eyes bore into him, ancient and unmoving. "Choose," she commanded. The mermaids around them whispered in anticipation, their tails flicking the water in eerie rhythm. Toby's breath came in ragged gasps. His heart pounded in his chest like a war drum. Kill his own, or die himself. No. There had to be another way. His hands trembled as he looked at Sei, Bode, the men he had known, the ones who trusted him. Sei had fought to keep them alive when the rig first collapsed. Bode had been his closest friend since university. Could he take their lives? His grip on the blade tightened. He turned back to Dara. "And if I refuse?" The ocean rumbled. Dara did not blink. "Then the abyss will take you." The waters around them shivered, and Toby felt it, something vast and ancient, waiting just beneath. A presence older than time itself, watching him. It was not patient. It was not merciful. Toby closed his eyes, his mind racing. If he chose to kill, the ocean would claim his soul anyway. If he refused, he would be dragged into the abyss. He was trapped. Unless he could turn the ocean's own rule against it. He took a slow breath, trying to keep his voice steady. "The ocean seeks balance, right?" he said, staring at Dara. A flicker of curiosity passed through her gaze. "Yes." Toby's pulse hammered. "Then let me trade something else." A murmur rippled through the mermaids. A few scowled. Others exchanged wary glances. Dara's expression remained unreadable. "And what would you offer?" Toby clenched his fists. He had nothing. Nothing, except himself. The realization made his stomach twist, but it was his only chance. "Take me instead," he said. A stunned silence fell over the city. Even the ocean itself seemed to pause. Dara tilted her head. "You offer your own life in place of theirs?" Toby's throat felt dry. "Yes." The mermaids whispered again, their voices slithering through the water. Some sneered in disgust. Others, Dara included, watched him with new interest. "You would give yourself to the sea?" Dara asked, her voice softer now. Toby swallowed hard. He didn't know what it meant, if it meant death, or worse, but it was better than killing his own people. "If that is the price," he said. "Then take it." Dara was silent for a long moment. Then, she smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a queen who had just won a war. She lifted her hand. The black tendrils holding Sei and the others unraveled. Their bodies sank slightly, but they were free. Toby's relief lasted only a second, before he felt it. Something cold and sharp coiled around his ankles. The ocean had accepted his trade. Dara's emerald eyes locked onto his. Then so be it. And Toby was dragged down. Down. Into the abyss. Toby barely had time to scream before the ocean yawned open beneath him. The water turned thick, heavy, no longer liquid but something older, colder, hungrier. The abyss had taken him. Black tendrils coiled around his limbs, dragging him deeper, away from the glowing ruins of the mermaid city. He thrashed, his lungs burning, his heart hammering in his chest. He had made the deal, his life for theirs, but he hadn't expected it to be so violent. Above him, Dara watched in silence. The other mermaids did not cheer. They simply observed, their glowing eyes unreadable. Then, the ocean swallowed them whole. Toby fell. Deeper. And deeper. The water around him grew colder. The light from above faded, swallowed by shadows so dark they seemed to pulse with life. His ears popped from the pressure, but the ocean had already claimed him. He did not drown. He was meant to survive this. Or perhaps, something wanted him alive. His vision blurred. The abyss had no end. But then, he saw it. A shape in the darkness. No. Not a shape. An eye. A single, massive eye, watching him. It blinked, slow and deliberate. The force of it sent a shockwave through the abyss, rattling Toby's bones. Terror choked him. He tried to move, to turn away, but the abyss held him fast. And then, it spoke. Not in words. Not in sound. But in feeling. A voice pressed into his skull, crawling into his mind like ink seeping through paper. It was ancient, layered, speaking in tones that vibrated through his very soul. You are not the first. Toby's body convulsed. The voice was everywhere, inside him, outside him. It was the voice of something forgotten. Something that should have never awakened. His throat tightened. What are you? Silence. Then, another ripple through the abyss. And more eyes opened. Dozens. Hundreds. Thousands. Toby choked back a sob. The thing in the darkness was not one being. It was many. And they were all watching him. Judging him. The voice returned, curling around his thoughts like a noose. Your kind has fed the sea. A flash of something appeared in Toby's mind, images of oil-slicked water, of mermaids drained dry, of bodies sinking into the depths. This was not just about him. This was about all of them. His company. The men who built the rigs. The people who stole from the ocean, who thought the deep was nothing but a resource to exploit. Toby felt the weight of it. The sins of humanity. And he knew, with absolute certainty, the abyss wanted repayment. It wanted penance. And Toby was not enough. The abyss shifted. The darkness around him moved, slithering like an ocean of living shadows. Then, the voice returned. This time, it was not a statement. It was a command. You will bring them to us. Toby's heart stopped. He stared into the abyss, the endless sea of glowing eyes. And he understood. He had not been taken to die. He had been taken to serve. Toby's mind reeled. You will bring them to us. The voice still echoed inside his skull, wrapping around his thoughts like a vice. His body trembled, not from cold, but from the weight of something far greater than him. He wasn't just a prisoner. He was being made into something else. A tool. A harbinger. The darkness around him churned. The abyss was not still, it was alive, shifting, waiting. The countless eyes blinked, watching his every breath, his every thought. Toby tried to push back the rising panic. Bring who? He rasped, his voice barely audible. The abyss shivered. A rush of images flooded his mind. Oil rigs spearing into the ocean's skin. Machines roaring, vomiting smoke, drowning coral in black sludge. The company's headquarters, tall, steel towers glinting in the sun. Executives in crisp suits, shaking hands over blood-stained contracts. More ships, more pipelines, more greed. The vision burned through him, searing into his bones. And then, a single face. Director Fullerin. The head of the company. The men who had sent him to the rig in the first place. The men who had known about the mermaids. Toby gasped, clutching his chest as the vision faded. The abyss did not answer in words, but the command was clear. He had been spared for one reason. To bring them to the ocean's judgment. A cold realization crawled up his spine. They were making him their executioner. Toby's stomach twisted. He thought he had sacrificed himself, that the ocean would claim him and be done with it. But no, they wanted more. And they wanted him to do it. His breathing came in ragged bursts. He couldn't do this. Could he? He wasn't a killer. But the abyss was unforgiving. A shape shifted in the darkness, rising from the depths. Toby's eyes widened as something emerged, a figure, tall and spectral, draped in flowing black tendrils. Not a mermaid. Not a human. Something in between. It reached for him. Toby's veins burned as the darkness curled around his skin, seeping into him, into his blood, into his breath. He screamed. The abyss was changing him. Turning him into something more. Something the ocean could use. Something that would walk among men, and drag them back to the sea. Toby's screams faded into the abyss, swallowed by the endless dark. His body burned, not with fire, but with something colder, deeper, something that did not belong to the world above. The tendrils of the abyss coiled around him, sinking into his flesh, into his bones. They were not just touching him. They were becoming part of him. Toby's breath hitched as he felt his own heartbeat slow. His body was changing, warping. His skin tingled, rippling like the surface of disturbed water. The darkness slithered beneath it, like ink spreading through a river. And then, the whispers began. They were not the voices of the abyss. No. These were older. They came from the depths of the ocean itself, from the bones of drowned men, from the echoes of lost ships, from the screams of those who had perished beneath the waves. They spoke inside him. They told him what he was becoming. A harbinger. A shadow of the deep. A creature no longer bound by the laws of the surface. A hunter of men. Toby gasped, trying to fight it, to push back against the abyss's grip. This wasn't him. He was not a monster. But the abyss did not care for what he believed. It only cared for what it needed. And it needed him to be something else. Pain lanced through his skull, and his vision swam. The abyss grew distant, yet he still felt its pull. Then, a sudden, violent rip. The world lurched. And Toby was no longer sinking. He was rising. Something was pulling him upward, out of the abyss. The ocean around him brightened, shifting from endless black to deep blue. The pressure lessened. The whispers grew distant. Then, he burst through the surface. Gasping. Choking. Alive. He landed hard, collapsing onto something solid. The rough texture of rock scraped against his arms. He coughed, spitting out water, his body shaking violently. For a long moment, he just lay there, his chest heaving. The sky above him was dark, filled with swirling storm clouds. He was on a shore. But he did not know where. And then, a voice. You lived. Toby flinched. He knew that voice. Slowly, painfully, he lifted his head. And there, standing at the water's edge, was Dara. Her emerald eyes gleamed, filled with something unreadable. Expectation. Calculation. Amusement. She had known this would happen. She had known the abyss would not simply kill him. It had sent him back. Dara stepped closer, her tail gliding across the wet sand. Do you feel it? She asked. Toby's breath shuddered. He did. The abyss had marked him. The ocean had claimed him. And now, he had a task to fulfill. Toby's body felt wrong. Every breath he took felt heavier, as though the ocean's weight still pressed against his chest. His skin prickled like something moved beneath it, whispering secrets only he could hear. The abyss had changed him. But how much? He pushed himself onto his hands and knees, his fingers digging into the wet sand. The tide lapped at his feet, the salty breeze filling his lungs. He felt the sea's presence inside him, a strange, dark current flowing beneath his skin. Dara watched in silence. Then, she spoke. "You belong to the ocean now." Toby's head snapped up, his heartbeat uneven. "No," he rasped. "I didn't agree to this." Dara tilted her head, considering him. "Did you think the abyss gives choices?" Toby clenched his fists. His muscles ached. His bones felt hollow. He forced himself to stand, legs trembling. I was supposed to be a sacrifice. You were chosen." Dara's voice was firm, her gaze unreadable. "The abyss does not waste life. It reshapes it." Toby's stomach twisted. Reshaped. He looked down at his hands. The veins beneath his skin were darker. Almost black. His reflection shimmered in a shallow pool of water nearby. What he saw made his blood run cold. His eyes, they were no longer fully human. The irises, once dark brown, were now tinged with a faint silver glow. Like moonlight dancing on restless waves. Like something that belonged to the deep. Toby stumbled back. No. No, this isn't. A sharp pulse shot through his chest. He doubled over, gasping. The voices, they were still there. Murmuring, whispering, urging. The sea was inside him. And it was calling. Dara stepped forward. "Do you hear them?" Toby squeezed his eyes shut. Yes. The abyss had not just marked him. It had given him a purpose. He remembered the vision. The images burned into his mind, the rigs, the factories, the corporation's headquarters. The men who had stolen from the ocean, who had drained mermaids like fuel. He understood now. The abyss wanted them. It had sent him back for one reason. To bring them to the deep. Toby's breathing came hard and fast. He wasn't a killer. He wasn't a monster. But the ocean had no mercy. Dara's gaze was steady. "You feel it, don't you?" she said softly. "The hunger." Toby swallowed. He did. A deep, aching pull in his chest. A need that did not belong to him. A hunger that did not seek food, but retribution. The abyss had made him its weapon. And he had no choice but to obey. Toby took a shaky step back, his heart hammering against his ribs. His body felt alien, stretched between two worlds. The warmth of the sand beneath his feet grounded him, but inside, the abyss churned. He didn't want this. He couldn't accept it. "I won't do it," he whispered, his voice raw. Dara's eyes darkened. "You don't have a choice." Toby gritted his teeth. "I do." Dara sighed, as if she had expected his defiance. Then she raised her hand, her fingers moving in a slow, deliberate motion. The tide stilled. The wind paused. For a brief moment, the world held its breath. Then, without warning, pain. Toby's veins burned, his vision flaring white. He collapsed to his knees, clutching his chest as an invisible force coiled around his body, tightening like a serpent. The voices inside him screamed. The hunger grew. Dara's voice cut through the torment, calm and unyielding. "The abyss does not give gifts without price." Toby gasped, his fingers digging into the wet sand. His body was on fire, but it wasn't from heat. It was cold, suffocating, like drowning in air. "The pain will worsen," Dara said. "It will tear you apart. It will consume you. Unless..." Toby looked up, his vision swimming. "Unless you feed it." His stomach twisted. "No," he rasped. "I won't kill for it." Dara studied him for a moment, then sighed. "You think you're still human?" Toby shuddered. He wanted to believe he was. But his hands, his skin, his eyes. Nothing felt real anymore. "The abyss doesn't care about what you want," Dara continued. You carry its hunger now. Deny it, and it will take from you instead. Toby didn't understand, until it happened. A sharp pull from deep inside him. Like something was being ripped away. He let out a strangled cry, his body collapsing. His muscles shrank, his vision blurred, his breath turned ragged. His life was being drained. Dara knelt beside him. You have two choices, Toby. Her voice was neither cruel nor kind. Just final. You hunt, she said. Or you are hunted. Toby trembled. And deep inside, the abyss waited for his answer. Toby gasped for air, his body trembling with the force of whatever had just drained him. It felt as if his own life force had been ripped from his bones, leaving him hollow. Dara watched him with measured patience, but her words echoed in his skull. You hunt, or you are hunted. He clenched his fists, his breath shallow. I won't do it. Dara sighed, shaking her head. You still don't understand, do you? She turned toward the water, raising one hand. The waves responded to her call, swirling upward like a spiraling tower of liquid power. The air crackled with an unseen force. You think this is just about you? Dara asked, her voice softer now, but no less dangerous. The abyss does not choose lightly. You were given this task because the ocean is dying. Toby tried to steady his breathing. Then why not do it yourself? Dara looked back at him, something flickering in her emerald green eyes. Was it sadness? Because I am the last warden, she said. I keep the seal closed. If I leave my place, the abyss will not stay contained. The deep is already stirring, Toby. He flinched as another pulse of pain rocked through his chest. He felt hunger clawing at him from the inside, an emptiness he did not recognize. The longer you resist, the weaker you'll become, Dara said. The abyss will take what it's owed, piece by piece, until you are nothing. Toby swallowed hard. I don't want to be a killer. Dara studied him, then took a step closer. There is another way, she said. Toby's head snapped up. What? You don't have to kill, she said. But you must bring them to the ocean. Toby's stomach twisted. What does that mean? Dara's gaze was unreadable. Take them to the water. Let the ocean decide their fate. He felt a shiver run down his spine. You mean? I mean, Dara interrupted, you can let the sea judge them. Toby hesitated. Could he really do this? Could he betray the people he worked for, the men who had sent him on that rig, who had knowingly captured mermaids and bled them for power? His mind went back to the faces of his fellow workers, to the ones who had vanished in the chaos. He had been part of this, whether he wanted to be or not. And then he remembered the vision. Director Fullerin. The men behind it all. Toby clenched his jaw. If the ocean wanted justice, it would start with him. He took a deep breath and nodded. Dara's lips curled into the faintest smile. Good, she murmured. The deal had been made. The ocean had chosen its hunter. And the hunt was about to begin. Toby stood at the edge of the shoreline, staring at the city in the distance. The lights of Lagos shimmered like distant stars, but he felt no warmth from them. He was different now. The abyss moved inside him, whispering in a voice only he could hear. The hunger was still there, twisting, gnawing, but he had made his choice. He would not kill, not yet. But he would bring them to the water. Let the ocean decide. A wave lapped at his ankles. He turned back to Dara, who watched him with unreadable eyes. Are you ready? She asked. Toby took a deep breath, clenching his fists. He felt stronger than he had before. The weakness, the pain, it had faded, replaced with something else. Something ancient. I'm ready, he said. Dara nodded. She reached out, her fingers brushing his forehead. A chill spread through his skin, sinking into his bones. Then, suddenly, darkness. For a moment, he felt weightless, like he was sinking into the deep all over again. Then, he was standing in the middle of Lagos. Cars honked. The distant chatter of street vendors and pedestrians filled the air. Neon lights flickered overhead. The city was alive. It was as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Toby took a shaky breath. The ocean had brought him back, but he was no longer one of them. He could feel the water inside him. He could sense the movement of the tide, the unseen pull of the deep. The abyss was watching. And he had a job to do. The first target. Toby moved through the crowded streets, his hood pulled low over his face. He had to be careful. He didn't know how much his body had changed, but he could feel eyes on him. The city's filth was clearer now, the greed, the corruption. He could smell it on the air, like oil on water. And then, he saw him. Director Fullerin. The man responsible for it all. The mastermind behind the corporation that had drained Mermaids for power. He was stepping out of a black SUV, flanked by 2 bodyguards. His suit was pristine, his gold watch gleaming under the streetlights. Toby's blood turned cold. The abyss stirred. His hands clenched into fists as a single thought filled his mind. Take him to the water. Toby pulled the hood of his jacket lower over his face, slipping into the shadows as Director Fullerin strode toward the entrance of a high-end restaurant. The man moved with the air of someone untouchable, someone who had spent his life controlling others. The abyss stirred inside Toby, urging him forward. Take him to the water. Let the ocean decide. Toby's grip tightened at his sides, but he forced himself to breathe. He couldn't afford to make a mistake. Not here, not now. He had to wait for the right moment. He moved carefully, weaving through the crowded street, watching as Fullerin greeted a group of wealthy businessmen. Their laughter rang through the night, blending with the hum of traffic and the calls of street vendors. Toby clenched his jaw. How many lives had this man destroyed? How much blood had been spilled in the name of profit? The mermaids had been hunted, drained, discarded, and for what? His fingers twitched. The abyss was hungry. But this had to be done right. He exhaled, slowing his pulse. He would follow. He would wait. And when the time was right, Fullerin would be taken to the ocean. The mark of the abyss. Toby kept his distance, tracking Fullerin as the men dined. Expensive wines, delicate dishes, blood money turned into luxury. The businessmen around him toasted to new deals, laughing like gods among mortals. Toby's stomach twisted. Then, Fullerin glanced up. For a heartbeat, their eyes met across the room. Toby's breath caught in his throat. Fullerin's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his gaze, a twitch of recognition. Did he know? Could he feel the abyss watching him? Toby looked away, pretending to study his phone, forcing himself to blend in. He had to be careful. When he glanced back, Fullerin had returned to his meal. But something was different now. The air felt heavier. The shadows seemed to shift. Toby had been noticed. And the hunt had truly begun. Toby felt it before he saw it, the change in the air, the tightening of security. The moment his eyes had met Fullerin's, something had shifted. He was no longer just following the men. He was being watched, too. Fullerin wasn't a fool. A man who built an empire on draining mermaids for power wouldn't rise to the top without an instinct for danger. And now, he sensed it. Toby forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't afford to move too quickly, to make himself look suspicious. The abyss inside him twisted, whispering of the hunt, of the hunger. Take him to the water. Not yet. Fullerin laughed again, clinking his wine glass against another's. But his posture had changed, just slightly. His shoulders were tighter, his glances sharper. His bodyguards had moved closer. They knew. Toby swallowed his impatience and stood, slipping out of the restaurant before he could draw more attention. If they already suspected him, he had to act fast. He had to change the game. The ocean was waiting. The trap. Outside, the city's heartbeat pulsed around him. Music from nearby bars, car horns, the chatter of street vendors. The streets were alive, but Toby felt like he was moving through a different world. A darker world. He ducked into an alley, pressing himself against the wall as his breathing steadied. The ocean inside him hummed, eager, hungry. A flicker of movement, his eyes darted toward the street. Two men in dark suits had stepped out of the restaurant. Not Folarin. His bodyguards. Toby exhaled slowly. They weren't looking for someone in a fight. They wanted a shadow, a threat in the dark. That was good. It meant Folarin was worried. It meant he was vulnerable. Toby stepped back into the street, blending into the crowd. He knew where Folarin was going next. The man's pattern was predictable. He always went to his private estate after a night out. And that estate sat right on the water. Toby's pulse quickened. He could feel the pull of the abyss, the waves calling for justice. The trap wasn't for him. It was for Folarin. Tonight, the ocean would claim what it was owed. The streets of Lagos blurred around Toby as he moved. The lights, the noise, the rush of human life, it all felt distant, as if he were walking in a world separate from everyone else. He could hear the ocean, even from here. Its voice rumbled in his chest, whispered through his veins. It was waiting. Watching. And so was Folarin. Toby kept his steps light as he trailed the convoy of sleek black cars weaving through the city's night. Folarin never traveled alone, always flanked by security, always hidden behind bulletproof windows. But none of that would matter. Not against the abyss. The estate was just ahead, sitting at the edge of the Atlantic. A fortress of wealth and greed. And soon, it would become a grave. The estate on the water. Folarin's mansion loomed at the shoreline, an island of light against the dark waves. Towering palm trees swayed in the breeze, and armed guards patrolled the high walls. Beyond the estate, the ocean stretched into the unknown, black as the void itself. Toby crouched in the shadows, watching as Folarin's car pulled into the driveway. The gates closed behind it with a heavy clang. He felt the abyss stir inside him. The ocean had been patient. But now, it was time. He whispered to the water. And the waves answered. A rising tide. The tide shifted unnaturally, rolling in without warning. The guards didn't notice, not yet. The ocean crept closer, its surface rippling, moving like a living thing. Toby moved with it. He slipped past the outer walls, unseen. He was no longer just a man, he was something else now, something that could walk between worlds. A shadow at the edge of the tide. Through a side window, he saw Folarin inside, pouring himself a drink. The man looked calm, but his shoulders were tense. He felt it. He knows I'm coming. Toby pressed a hand against the wet stone of the mansion. The water inside him reached out, merging with the waves. A soft hum filled the air. Then, the lights flickered. The mansion shuddered. And the first scream rang out. The first scream cut through the night like a blade. Toby didn't flinch. He had heard screams before, of men, of mermaids, of the ocean itself. But this was only the beginning. Inside the mansion, the lights flickered again, casting long shadows across the glass windows. The power grid surged and died in rapid pulses, as if the very walls of the estate were breathing. Then came the second scream. A guard near the front entrance clutched his chest and collapsed, choking on seawater that wasn't there a moment ago. His eyes bulged, his body convulsed. The others around him staggered back, shouting in confusion. More guards rushed toward their fallen comrade, shouting into their radios. But the static that crackled through their earpieces was not human speech. It was a low, hollow song. A mermaid's lament. The ocean was inside the house now. Folarin knows fear. Inside his lavish study, Director Folarin's hands trembled as he poured himself a drink. The ice in his whiskey melted instantly, turning the amber liquid murky and dark. He could feel it, the unnatural pull in the air, the heaviness pressing down on his chest. Something was watching him. Something wanted him. He turned to the large glass window overlooking the Atlantic. Beyond the crashing waves, the ocean stretched, vast and endless. He had spent his whole life conquering it, bending its creatures to his will. Now, it had come to collect its debt. The water at the shore was no longer moving naturally. It swirled, slow and deliberate, as if something beneath the surface was awakening. A shape moved in the waves. Folarin's breath hitched. He grabbed his phone with shaking fingers, dialing the emergency security line. The call didn't go through. Then, a whisper. It came from behind him. "Time's up." Folarin spun around, gun in hand. But he was alone. Or so he thought. A shadow in the room. Toby stepped from the darkness, his hood still drawn low. But something had changed. His presence wasn't just physical, it was deep, like the ocean itself had shaped him into something more than human. Folarin's lips parted, his throat working soundlessly. He had seen many things in his life. He had made monsters of his own. But he had never seen this. "You," his voice was hoarse. "You should be dead." Toby didn't blink. The air between them was thick with moisture, heavy with salt. The ocean was pressing into this place, drawn to its prey. Toby murmured. The lights above them shattered. Water dripped from the ceiling. Not from pipes. From nowhere. The abyss had followed him inside. "Please." Folarin's voice shook. "We can talk about this." Toby tilted his head. The ocean inside him twisted. "Did the mermaids beg when you drained them?" Folarin flinched. Outside, the storm rolled in. The mansion's walls groaned as something massive stirred in the ocean beyond. The abyss was waiting. Watching. Toby stepped closer. "Come," he said softly. "The water is calling your name." Folarin's breath hitched. His legs refused to move, as if something invisible had wrapped around them. The waves beyond the window rose higher. And then, the glass shattered. The ocean rushed in. A wall of water crashed into the mansion, swallowing the study in an instant. The force sent bookshelves splintering, furniture tumbling, and priceless artifacts dissolving in the flood. Director Folarin barely had time to scream before the current ripped him from his feet. Salt water burned his lungs as he tumbled through the waves, his arms flailing for something, anything, to hold onto. But there was nothing. Only the pull of the ocean. The abyss was waiting. Dragged below. Toby stood motionless as the water surged past him. The flood didn't touch him, it parted around his feet like a living thing, recognizing its own. His breath was steady. His heart, calm. This was justice. Through the swirling currents, he saw Folarin's form struggling, twisting, fighting against the inevitable. The ocean was dragging him toward the shattered window, toward the vast, dark deep beyond. He clawed at the floor, his fingers slipping against soaked carpet. His panicked gasps turned to sputtered choking as the tide forced itself into his lungs. "Toby," he coughed, reaching out. "Please." But Toby only stared. He had begged once, too. On that rig, as the ocean's wrath had claimed the others. No one had answered him then. Folarin's body lifted from the floor, the current pulling him into the open air, toward the sea. The last thing he saw before being wrenched away was Toby's expression. Cold. Silent. Unmoved. Then, he was gone. The waves swallowed him whole. The depths await. Folarin plunged into darkness. The ocean closed above him, sealing him away from the world of men. He twisted, kicking, screaming soundlessly as he sank into the abyss. The light from the surface faded. The water was cold. Too cold. Something moved in the black. At first, he thought it was a trick of his oxygen-starved mind. But then he felt it, the pressure, the presence, the weight of something ancient. And then he saw them. Eyes. 1,000 of them. No, more. Watching. Waiting. The abyss had awakened. A shape unfolded in the dark, impossibly large, its form shifting like liquid, neither flesh nor shadow. And then, it spoke. Not in words. Not in sound. But in feeling. It knew him. It knew his sins. The lives he had stolen. The blood he had spilled. It knew. Folarin tried to scream. But the ocean had already claimed his voice. The abyss did not give death easily. It would take everything else first. Folarin's world had turned to darkness. His body twisted in the cold embrace of the ocean, his limbs flailing uselessly as the current dragged him deeper. The surface was gone, swallowed by an endless void of black water. He kicked, clawed, fought, but it did not matter. The ocean did not care for struggle. It only took. The last of his breath burst from his lungs in a trail of silver bubbles, spiraling upward, toward a light he would never reach. And then, he felt it. Something vast moving in the dark. The judgment of the deep. A shape loomed before him, shifting, impossible to define. Not a creature, not a thing of flesh, but a force, ancient, endless, hungry. The 1,000 watching eyes were still there. Unblinking. Knowing. Folarin's lungs burned. His mind screamed for air. But he was not dying. The abyss would not grant him that mercy. No. It wanted him to feel. The shadows curled around him like fingers, threading into his skin, into his bones, into his very soul. The water around him churned, whispering in a voice without sound. It spoke to him, not in words, but in memories. His own. A life of greed. Folarin saw everything. The mermaids, writhing in cages as their blood was siphoned drop by drop. Their golden scales turning dull, their luminous eyes dimming. The way their bodies withered, drained of life to fuel his machines. He saw their pain. He had never cared. And now, he felt it. A sudden, sharp tear in his chest, as if something inside him had cracked open. A burning in his veins, like fire and ice at once. His fingers twitched. And then he saw his hands. His skin was changing. The abyss was not simply consuming him. It was remaking him. His fingers stretched, elongating, the flesh turning slick and black like the deep-sea things that lurked in the endless dark. His legs fused, the bones bending, twisting into something unnatural. His body convulsed, and then stilled. He was no longer a man. Not anymore. A new monster is born. Folarin tried to scream, but the sound that left him was not human. It was a deep, guttural song, hollow and sorrowful, like the cries of the mermaids he had once tormented. The abyss had reshaped him into what he had feared most. A creature of the deep. A thing that would never again walk upon land. The ocean had claimed him, body and soul. And it was not done. Toby feels the change. Above the water, Toby stood at the shoreline, staring out at the churning sea. The mansion was in ruins, shattered glass and broken walls spilling out into the night. But he barely noticed. Something inside him shifted. His breath hitched. His vision blurred. The ocean had taken its vengeance. But it was still hungry. And now, it was looking at him. Toby stood on the shore, his breath coming in slow, steady waves. But inside, he was unraveling. The ocean churned before him, dark and restless. He could feel it now, not just see it, not just hear the roar of the waves. It pulsed beneath his skin, whispering, waiting. The deal was not finished. The ocean was not done with him. Something is changing. His fingers twitched. A chill crawled up his spine, deeper than cold, something ancient, something wrong. His veins pulsed with a sensation he did not understand, like his very blood had turned to water. He clenched his fists, breathing through his nose, trying to ignore it. But the ocean was inside him now. And it was calling him home. A city that no longer feels like home. Behind him, the city lights flickered. Lagos, once a place of power and greed, now felt like a cage. The streets, the buildings, the glass towers that had once seemed so mighty, all of it felt small. Temporary. He had seen something greater. Something deeper. And he did not belong here anymore. Not fully. The ocean knows no mercy. A voice drifted on the wind. Soft. Singing. He turned sharply, scanning the shoreline. There was no one there. But he knew the voice. It was the same one that had drifted through the rig before everything had collapsed. The same voice that had echoed in the flood when the ocean had taken Folarin. The song of the mermaids. A warning. A whisper. A summons. The mark of the abyss. Toby exhaled slowly, rolling back his sleeve. His skin was changing. Only slightly. Barely noticeable. But if he looked closely, he could see it, the faint shimmer, the dark veins spreading beneath the surface like ink in water. He swallowed hard. No. He was still himself. Still a man. He had made his choice. Hadn't he? The ocean had punished Folarin. That should have been the end. So why did it feel like something else was coming? Like something inside him was still waiting to wake up. The water creeps closer. The tide rushed in, swirling around his feet. Cold. Too cold. He stepped back. But the water followed. Not in waves. Not naturally. It reached for him. The way the abyss had reached for Folarin. Toby's breathing quickened. No, he shook his head. We're done. I gave you what you wanted. But the ocean never made deals. It only took. And Toby was beginning to realize. It had never planned to let him go. The tide refused to retreat. It lapped at Toby's ankles, cold as death, creeping higher, inch by inch. No wind blew. No waves crashed. The sea moved against nature, drawn to him like a predator scenting wounded prey. Toby staggered back. His breath came fast, shallow. His body felt wrong, like he wasn't fully standing on solid ground anymore. And then, the voices returned. Soft. Distant. A chorus of whispers, flowing through the night like the wind through reeds. But this time, they weren't warnings. They were calling his name. Toby. He clenched his jaw. His hands curled into fists. No. But the ocean was not asking. A war inside his skin. His veins burned. A deep, searing ache spread through his limbs, curling in his chest, sinking into his bones. His heartbeat stuttered, slowing, stretching, until it matched the rhythm of the waves. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Like the heartbeat of the abyss. A pulse not his own. He yanked up his sleeve, his breath caught in his throat. The shimmer on his skin was spreading. His forearm had taken on a faint, iridescent hue, like something not entirely human. The veins beneath were no longer dark, but black as the ocean floor, moving, shifting, like they were alive. He grabbed at his wrist, pressing his fingers into his skin. This isn't real. This isn't happening. But his body didn't listen. The change was already happening. And he wasn't in control. A city that can't save him. Behind him, Lagos was alive with light. Cars honked. Billboards flashed. Music blared from street vendors lining the roads. The world was moving, bustling, normal. But Toby knew the truth. He could never go back. Even if he walked into that city, even if he tried to pretend this night never happened, he would always hear the ocean. It would always be calling. And soon, he would answer. Whether he wanted to or not. The ocean wants him back. The water rushed forward, swirling up to his knees. No, no, no. Toby stumbled, barely keeping his balance. The waves coiled around him, not violent, gentle. Familiar. Like the ocean wasn't forcing him. It was inviting him. Like he was already one of them. A shadow moved beneath the water. Toby froze. A shape, long, serpentine, too fast for the eye to follow, circling just beneath the surface. Not an animal. Not a fish. Something watching him. Waiting. His chest heaved. His breath came fast. And then, a hand broke the surface. The hand in the water. Slender fingers, webbed between the knuckles. Skin pale as pearl, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Nails curved, sharp as obsidian. A mermaid's hand. Reaching for him. His breath caught. The last time he had seen a mermaid this close, she had been in chains. Drained. Dying. But this one was free. And it wanted him to come. His pulse slammed in his ears. The ocean seemed to breathe, a pull stronger than gravity itself. His knees buckled. His feet slid forward, toward the waves. He should have turned. Should have run. But he couldn't. Because deep down, somewhere inside him, he knew he belonged to the water now. And he didn't know if he wanted to fight it anymore. Toby's feet sank into the wet sand, the tide pulling at him with quiet insistence. The hand in the water remained outstretched, unmoving, patient. The air was thick with salt and silence. Toby's pulse pounded in his ears. He should have turned and run. He should have fought. But the water called to him, a song humming in his bones, in his blood, whispering the truth he didn't want to face. He wasn't meant to stay on land anymore. A voice from the deep. Then, the mermaid spoke. Not with words. Not in a language human ears could understand. But deep inside him, inside his chest, he felt it. A voice like the rush of waves against cliffs. Like the crash of a storm on an open sea. Come home, Toby. His body shuddered. No. He whispered, shaking his head. His voice was barely there, barely his. The mermaid's eyes broke the surface. Dark, endless, reflecting the moon in twin silver pools. She was beautiful, but not in a way he could comprehend. Not in a way meant for humans. She was not human. And neither was he. Not anymore. His body betrays him. Toby stumbled back, but his feet did not obey. Instead of pulling away, his muscles relaxed, like the very tide had sunk into his skin. The change was accelerating. His breathing hitched. His hands trembled. He flexed his fingers, watching them glisten. That faint, iridescent glow had spread. The webbing was more visible now. And his veins. They were no longer black. They pulsed a deep, rich blue, like the color of the ocean at its darkest depths. He felt it crawling inside him, rewriting him, erasing the man he had been. No, no, no. This wasn't what he had wanted. He had survived the abyss. He had broken free of the curse. Hadn't he? But the ocean never gave back what it had claimed. And it had already claimed him. The other mermaids arrive. The water moved again. More figures surfaced, 5, maybe 6. Silhouettes against the moonlit waves. Their long, slick hair drifted like seaweed. Their eyes shimmered like sunken pearls. They watched him. Silent. Waiting. The mermaid closest to him lifted her other hand, palm up, fingers curling slightly. An invitation. Come, Toby. Come home. His heartbeat slowed. The pull was stronger now. If he stepped forward, just once, he knew he would never walk on land again. His lungs tightened. A war raged inside him. Stay. Fight. Run. Or surrender. His knees buckled. The tide wrapped around him. And then, a voice cut through the night. Toby. A voice from the city. A voice from land. A voice he recognized. A choice to make. Toby's eyes snapped toward the shore. A figure stood at the edge of the beach. A woman. His heart lurched. No. It couldn't be. But it was. Zainab. She stood there, chest rising and falling, her breath ragged from running. Her eyes wide with horror as she saw what was happening. Toby, what are you doing? Her voice was real. Solid. It cut through the fog in his mind, the weight of the ocean's pull. For the first time in what felt like forever, Toby realized he still had a choice. Stay on land. Or disappear beneath the waves. Forever. His body swayed between them. Land. Sea. Zainab. The mermaids. And the ocean still whispered, still called his name. Waiting. What would he choose? Toby. Zainab's voice cut through the night, desperate, real. Toby's breath came fast and shallow. His legs trembled. The tide pulled at him, whispering its promise, calling him home. And yet, Zainab stood there. On solid ground. Her eyes were wide with fear, her expression pleading. She had chased him here, through the city, through the dark, to stop him from making a mistake. But was it a mistake? His fingers twitched. The mermaid's hand was still waiting, inches away. The ocean rippled, impatient, the other mermaids shifting in the water, watching, waiting for him to make the only choice that made sense. The choice to leave this world behind. To become one of them. One with the ocean. The ocean tightens its grip. Toby's lungs ached. Not like before, not the burn of a man gasping for air, but something deeper, something unnatural. His body was changing, and the longer he stood in the water, the more it felt like his lungs didn't belong here anymore. Like they weren't made for the air. A deep, sharp pang struck his ribs. He gasped, doubling over, hands clutching his chest. Zainab took a step forward. Toby. Her voice cracked. She was closer now, close enough that he could see the tears glistening in her eyes. Come back, she whispered. Please. Something inside him shook. He had seen fear before. In the eyes of men. In the last moments before the abyss claimed them. But this was not fear for herself. This was fear for him. One step away from no return. The mermaid's hand was still stretched toward him. If he took it, there would be no turning back. Zainab took another step forward, eyes searching his face. You're still you, she whispered. Aren't you? Toby's body shuddered. Was he? The reflection in the water told him no. His eyes, once warm brown, now had a strange silver sheen to them, glowing faintly under the moonlight. His veins pulsed blue, his skin glistened with an eerie, unnatural light. He wasn't the man who had arrived at the oil rig weeks ago. But was he still human enough to fight it? Toby. Zainab reached for him, not with fear, not with force, but with hope. His breath caught. A choice. A moment. And he took a step back. The ocean's wrath. The water screamed. Not in sound, but in force. A wave rose, dark and towering, angry. The mermaids hissed, their beautiful faces twisting into something else, something ancient, vengeful. They had been so close. So close to reclaiming him. Toby stumbled, the tide now fighting him, dragging him back. It refused to let go. He turned, straining, reaching. Zainab's hand met his. And yanked him back to shore. The ocean roared. But Toby fell to his knees on the sand, breathing air again. Still human. Barely. The ocean never forgets. The mermaids did not follow. They could not. They hovered at the water's edge, watching, their eyes filled with something deeper than anger. Something colder. A promise. This was not the end. Toby had refused the ocean's call. But the ocean did not forget. It had claimed him once. And one day, it would come for him again. Toby collapsed onto the damp sand, his chest heaving. Every breath felt like a battle. The ocean had tried to take him back, and for a moment, he had almost let it. But Zainab. She had saved him. His fingers dug into the sand. The tide licked at his heels, retreating, but not gone. He could still feel it inside him. The pull. The hunger. The curse. The mermaids had not followed. They still watched from the waves, their glowing eyes like lanterns in the dark. But they weren't angry anymore. They were waiting. Toby understood what that meant. He wasn't free. Not really. The ocean had not let him go. It had simply given him more time. Zainab's plea. Zainab knelt beside him, her hands gripping his shoulders. "Toby," she gasped, eyes wide. "Are you okay?" He tried to answer, but his throat was tight. He had left the water, but his body hadn't. His veins still glowed faintly beneath his skin. His heartbeat was slower than it should be. His breath felt unnatural, too shallow, too cold. He wasn't human anymore. Not fully. Zainab saw it too. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. She didn't have to. Toby already knew what she wanted to say. "What are you becoming?" He had no answer. Instead, he whispered, "We need to go." Zainab hesitated, then nodded. The mermaids watched as they stumbled away, silent. Toby did not look back. But he could still feel their eyes on him. The city feels different. When they reached the edge of the beach, the world felt wrong. The city lights flickered unnaturally. The air smelled like salt, even though the ocean was now behind him. People passed them by, oblivious to what had just happened. Oblivious to the thing that still lived inside him. Toby swallowed hard. Would he ever be normal again? He wasn't sure. And that terrified him. The ocean always calls. That night, Toby barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them, the mermaids, the waves, the abyss. He could hear their voices. Their songs. Even on land, they still whispered to him. They were waiting. Because one day, he would return to them. Whether he wanted to or not. Epilogue, The Water Watches. Days passed. Weeks. Toby tried to live normally, but the ocean never let him. His skin still shimmered in the dark. His dreams were still filled with black water. And sometimes, when he was alone, he swore he could hear the sound of waves. Even in the heart of the city. The ocean had marked him. And one day, it would come back for him. Because the ocean never forgets. and it always takes what belongs to it.